But we've got reporter Eric Lipton here from the New York Times tonight to talk about a piece of the scandal that we really have watched coming down this pike that appears to now be pretty well and truly confirmed. Now, we highlighted this on the show on Friday night. It was this David Ignatius column in the Washington Post raising the troubling prospect that the scheme for which the president is now being impeached, this Ukraine scheme, for which he has basically been caught this year, might have been not the first time he did this. Might have been round two. Basically, that Rudy Giuliani and President Trump might have already done this once before in Ukraine with almost the same script, with the president who preceded Volodymyr Zelensky. David Ignatius was writing about it at the Post late last week. New York Times reporter Andrew Kramer had reported on pieces of this in an article the Times published in May of last year. But now Mark Mazzetti, Eric Lipton, and Andrew Kramer have updated the story. And it sounds like, yeah, what has happened in Ukraine ahead of Zelensky getting in there, the guy who had the infamous phone call with Trump, what happened there with the previous president seems very much like a first draft of what President Trump has been caught for in this impeachment inquiry now. Quoting from the Times tonight, quote, long before a telephone call with Ukraine's president that prompted an impeachment inquiry, President Trump was exchanging political favors with a different Ukrainian leader who desperately sought American help for his country's struggle against Russian aggression. Near the end of 2017, just as the Ukrainian government was trying to get final approval from the Trump administration on the sale of Javelin anti-tank weapons, the prosecutor general then working for the Ukrainian president, Petro Poroshenko, quote, had begun freezing cases in Ukraine that were relevant to the Mueller investigation, including an inquiry tracing millions of dollars that Ukrainian political figures paid to Mr. Manafort. Quote, in 2017, shortly after Mr. Giuliani visited Kiev, President Poroshenko's prosecutor general took control from an anti-corruption bureau of a criminal investigation related to Mr. Manafort. The same prosecutor general took further steps to slow walk the Ukrainian cases related to the Mueller investigation in November of 2017. He gave an official order to freeze those cases in April of 2018. That same prosecutor general would, quote, later coordinate closely with Mr. Giuliani to promote an investigation into former Vice President Joseph R. Biden. So this year, in 2019, President Trump is being impeached for demanding these bogus investigations of Joe Biden and other things he thinks will hurt the Democrats for his reelection campaign in 2020. The impeachment investigation has also turned up evidence that the president may not have just asked for those things. He may have conditioned official actions of the U.S. government on him getting those things. He may have conditioned a White House meeting on the delivery of those investigations, not to mention hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid that he held up for months. We know from the transcript of the president's call with the new president of Ukraine, Zelensky, this year, that President Trump raised the issue of those investigations immediately after Zelensky told President Trump he wanted to buy more Javelin anti-tank missiles. That's when Trump said, quote, I would like you to do us a favor, though. Well, now what the New York Times has nailed down is that before all of this happened in 2019, in 2017 and 2018, they did what looks like a dry run of this same dynamic. Some of the same people involved in this scheme, Giuliani, the Ukrainian prosecutor guy, they were also apparently involved in kiboshing the Paul Manafort cases and other cases that related to the special counsel's investigation. And that, at least from the Ukrainian perspective, there was some feeling that those kinds of actions would have kept the Trump administration happy and that was a key thing to do if Ukraine was ever going to get those Javelin missiles. Democratic Congressman Jerry Connolly, who's participated in the impeachment depositions, walked out of the impeachment hearing room last week and said this to reporters.
Do you want to speak on camera briefly? Just what you told them.
If I were an enterprising reporter, I would spend a little time on the issue of Javelin missiles.
Why?
Why?
Be an enterprising reporter.
According to the New York Times, we now know why Congressman Jerry Connolly said that after walking out of one of those impeachment depositions last week, which is that one of the impeachment witnesses who testified last week, according to the Times, Catherine Croft, who worked on Ukraine issues for the National Security Council, she apparently had just testified that the Javelin missile sales, first round of Javelin missile sales from the Trump administration to Ukraine, had actually been held up for a time by the Trump White House. Croft testified that, quote, the White House Office of Management and Budget briefly held up the weapons sale after the Pentagon and State Department had both approved it. And this is not this year. This is not the thing for which President Trump is being impeached for from 2019. This was last year, apparently when they were writing the first draft for what Trump would get impeached for this year, when they appear to have tried and succeeded at basically this exact same play with the other Ukrainian president who preceded the one who's there now. Eric Lipton joins us live in just a moment. We've also got a member of the Intelligence Committee joining us, too. I know there's a lot of news, and today has been sort of overwhelming in terms of the number of news stories that broke, but just take it one at a time. We'll get there. Stay with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.